This case takes place in Australia on the 12th of January 2016. Karen Chetcuti was a 49-year-old woman who lived in Whorouly, Victoria. She was a mother of two and worked as a manager at the nearby city council. Karen was described as popular in her local community. Those who knew her thought very highly of her. On the 12th of January 2016, Karen attended a local pub. She left this pub at around 7:20 p.m. Karen was divorced. She and her ex-husband had a good relationship after the divorce. The situation was described as amicable, and at this time her two teenagers were staying at their father's house for the week, so she made her way home to an empty house. But this would be the last time that she was ever seen alive. Karen never showed up to work the following day. According to those who knew her, this was very out of character for her to do. Concern grew as more time passed, with Karen still not showing up or responding to calls. Whorouly is a town 200 kilometers away from Melbourne, and at the time had a population of around 360 people. With it being such a small community, the news travelled fast, and with Karen being highly respected, pretty much everyone shared the concern. The police were notified and a search was soon underway to help locate Karen. When the police went to her house, the lights had been left on, and her bag and purse had been left at home, but her mobile phone was missing. But very soon after Karen's disappearance, her neighbour, Michael Cardamone, came forward to the police and told them that he had seen Karen on the 12th of January at around 9 p.m. Michael had a disgusting past and had recently been released from prison in 2015. He had been found guilty of SAing a 15-year-old girl, and at this time he was on parole for the crime. Karen wasn't overly fond of Michael for obvious reasons. She was well aware of his crimes, and he was a prolific user of illegal substances. It wasn't rare for her to find used syringes near his property, among other articles. Michael told the police that Karen had come over to his place asking for some cherry tomatoes at around 9 p.m. The police checked Karen's fridge, and they did indeed find the cherry tomatoes that Michael had spoken of. Of course, the police began looking at those close to Karen. One suspect was her ex-husband, but it soon became clear to investigators that he played no part in her disappearance. The other suspect that the investigators believed could be responsible was Michael, due to his strange story about Karen needing tomatoes so late at night. It was on the 14th of January that evidence pointing to something sinister came to light. Her burnt-out cow was found 20 kilometers away from where she lived.
An urgent search is underway after the suspicious disappearance of a mother of two in Victoria's northeast. Grave fears are held after her car was found burnt out. Crime reporter Alexis Daish.
A mother missing, her car incinerated and her mobile phone nowhere to be found.
I strongly suspect that there is someone or some others involved in this disappearance.
Karen Chekuti is a mother to two teenage children and a hard-working manager at the Wangaratta Council. When she didn't turn up to work, colleagues knew something was wrong. At 5:30 p.m, she headed to her local pub just down the road from her home. She went on her own, staying until 7:30 p.m. It's the last confirmed sighting in what's now a suspicious missing persons case.
On the 16th, 4 days after the disappearance of Karen, Michael contacted his solicitor and told them that he had been kidnapped. However, Michael was located and arrested in Ringwood, a suburb of Melbourne, on the 17th of January. He told the police that he had been kidnapped by a Lebanese gang who had been targeting him and Karen. He claimed that this gang had made a number of phone calls to him stating that they would hurt him and his family, and was adamant that this gang was responsible for the disappearance of Karen. The story that Michael had told the police seemed to be too far-fetched. They didn't believe a word he was saying. Michael then told them that the kidnappers had told him where they had buried her body, but threatened him at gunpoint not to say anything about the killing. Michael then led the police on a search for Karen's body, using the directions he claimed the killers had given to him. On the 18th of January, Karen's body was found off a track down Coppers Creek Road, and her body was in a truly horrific state. She had been badly beaten, her body had been run over, and she had been set on fire. An autopsy was conducted on her body, This revealed even further horror. As well as being burned alive and horrifically beaten, Karen had also been injected with amphetamines and battery acid, and once she had been killed, her body had been run over with a large vehicle. On the 19th of January, Michael was charged with the murder of Karen. Since the police didn't believe Michael's first story, he decided to come up with another tall tale. As I said earlier, Karen's car was found and it had been burned. Well, Michael had acquired help from a friend named Eddie George. George had assisted in destroying the car, but he believed he was doing it for insurance fraud. He had absolutely no idea that Michael had committed a horrendous murder. Because Eddie had assisted Michael, he tried to pin all of the blame on Eddie. He said that he was the one who had actually killed Karen. The police didn't believe this story either, but after the police spoke with Eddie, he agreed to testify against Michael in court. Michael was then made aware that Eddie was planning to testify against him. After hearing this information, Michael devised a plan to silence Eddie. In the meantime, the news of Karen's death was announced, which of course deeply disturbed the community. Karen's funeral was held in February, and literally hundreds of people attended. Whilst in remand, Michael began talking to a friend in prison. He told this fellow prisoner that he had indeed been the one who had killed Karen, and went into detail about what he had done and why. He said he had wanted to sleep with Karen for a while and that he had tried building a rapport with her, but she had rejected his advances. He also told this prisoner that Eddie George had no idea about the murder and that he had tricked him into helping him dispose of Karen's car. So this is what happened to Karen. Michael went to Karen's home at 9:30 p.m. on January the 12th, 2016, knowing that she would be alone. Karen was watering her vegetable garden on the night when Michael began to attack her. He was able to sedate her with horse tranquilizer and tied her up with rope and duct tape. During the next hour, he forced her to ingest a small amount of animal tranquilizer and amphetamines, and left her bound and gagged for hours in his shed. Michael then left the property and purchased some illegal substances and consumed a significant quantity, mainly meth. Michael returned in the early hours of the 13th of January and dragged Karen into his car. He drove to the Lake Buffalo area, and it's here where he brutally ended Karen's life. He essayed Karen before savagely beating her. The autopsy showed that she had 6 broken ribs and a fractured skull. And at some point, Karen was also injected with battery acid. The fear and pain she must have experienced is just beyond words. But then, if that wasn't enough already, Michael doused Karen with petrol and set her alight, and the autopsy showed that she was still alive when she was set on fire. After Karen was dead, Michael got into his car and drove over her body in his 4x4 vehicle. Following this, he left her body and went to a car wash to wash his car a number of times over. At some point too, Michael also went over to Karen's home and placed the cherry tomatoes in the fridge. This was done as a way to corroborate his story that he would later tell the police. The container of tomatoes was examined by investigators. It was found that the fingerprints on the box matched with Michael's. Karen's fingerprints were nowhere to be found. After cleaning his car, Michael got help from Eddie to burn Karen's car. Upon hearing the graphic details of Karen's death, this fellow inmate that Michael had confided in spoke with the police and told them the gruesome story. And the story seemed to match up with what the autopsy report had indicated. As Michael was in jail, he spoke with his mother and the two began plotting. Michael was able to get the details for a murder for hire whilst in jail, and wanted to use their expertise to kill Eddie before the trial could take place. It was during coded conversations on the phone and in prison visits that Michael and his mother would plan. They were able to contact this hitman named Matty Thompson. Together, the mother and son worked out a plan to pay $25,000 for the hit job, and used the word "Noki" for a code word for cash. Although little did the mother and son know that the hitman was actually an undercover officer. On the 23rd of March 2016, Michael's mother Maria handed a package with $9,000 cash to another covert operative. Michael and his mother had instructed this hitman to make it look like Eddie had taken his own life. He was told to force Eddie to create a false confession letter for the police to find, and that this letter should contain an admission of guilt that he killed Karen and that Michael had nothing to do with it. 6 days later, the undercover officer told them that the job had been done. Michael told Mattie Thompson to show his mother a photograph of the body as proof that Eddie had actually been killed in the way he specified. The undercover officer then asked Michael if his mother would be able to handle seeing a photograph of a dead body. Michael replied and said that she would be absolutely fine. 2 months later, Maria was also arrested. She was charged with perverting the course of justice. Michael was also charged with the attempted murder of Eddie George. Shortly after his mother was arrested, Michael pleaded guilty to the murder of Karen. However, this was not a sign of remorse. It's believed that Michael only changed his plea to guilty to secure his mother's release. It was motivated by self-interest. The trial would begin in 2017. The horrors of what Karen endured was read out to the court. The account of what happened shocked even the most seasoned officers and law officials. The judge overseeing the case stated that they had never come across a case so twisted. It said that Michael showed no signs of remorse for what he did, and this didn't go unnoticed by the judge. The prosecution stated that the crime was so cruel and so horrific that a step towards mercy or parole was too much, and that he should serve the rest of his life behind bars with no chance of parole. The judge said, "I have never declined to fix a minimum term, but this is a shocking case." The judge added that he was troubled by the fact that Michael had not provided an official reason as to why he killed Karen, nor had he shown any remorse. The prosecutor told the judge, "This crime falls into the worst category," and highlighted how Michael's chances for rehabilitation are virtually non-existent. Michael was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The sentence handed down by the judge in August of 2017 was a landmark decision in the state of Victoria. Never before had a murderer who pleaded guilty and did not have any prior convictions for murder been denied the chance of parole. Michael's mother Maria, who was 78 at the time, was sentenced to the 141 days that she had already served in jail since her arrest. The judge ruled that she was just another victim of his manipulation. Michael's lawyer claimed that the sentence was excessive and has since tried to appeal his sentence. Thankfully, however, Michael has been told that he has no right to appeal his sentence, and the Court of Appeal judges labelled him an unfeeling sociopath. The case of Karen is one of the cruelest I have ever come across, and it is regarded as one of Australia's most gruesome and disturbing. The fact that Michael got life in prison without the possibility of parole in Australia speaks to the absolute horrors that he was and is capable of.